United States of America. Unity and oneness is what we're made of. One nation under God, it's plain to see. We're showing the whole world what a country should be. United we stand in America, hand in hand in America. Together as one in a land that we love. United we stand in America.
To be not quite as hot as it has been in the Springfield, Missouri area, but we are live on Axe Media Group headquarters, and this is show number 220. So 220, we've been blessed, and we appreciate everybody watching in today. We have a very, very special show. We have a super difference maker. We always have difference makers on our shows, and this man here is probably one of the best and most important decision makers and that we've ever had on our show. So we're extremely excited. I want to say this before we start. Happy birthday to Jim Whining. Today is his birthday. He's still a young man, and he's our leader and CEO of Axe Ministry Group. And he would be here today, but he also has a doctor's appointment today, and so he's going to go ahead and keep that appointment, but he would be here. And I also wanted to remind everyone all over the country, we're being seen right now in all 50 states and some other foreign countries, maybe 10, 12, 16 countries could be watching in right now. And here's the deal. School's starting already in our area. School's starting soon in all parts of the country. And I just urge people, as I noticed the traffic was high. When I was trying to get home from the courthouse yesterday, the traffic was heavy. And it's going to be heavy, and everyone needs to be careful and take your time. Do not cause accidents and hit someone or hit a school bus or whatever. Be careful as we're driving. That would be a good thing too. So what we have today is a very, very special guest, someone I've known for a long time. He doesn't know that he's been my role model, but I've been watching him for a long time. He was my law instructor at SMS a long time ago when I was in pre-pharmacy school, and I've just watched his career, watched what he's done for people, and that is General John Ashcroft. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm glad to be alive.
Well, you are alive. You are alive.
You're talking about antiquity when you're talking. You even called it SMS.
It is. It's Missouri State.
Yeah, it's Missouri State. It went through Southwest Missouri State Teachers College and Southwest Missouri State University, and then finally graduated to Missouri State University. Yeah, which may reflect something about the way our education institutions have progressed, if one way to say it. Some of them have progressed, some of them have just changed their names. I think Missouri State has actually become a substantial state university.
Yeah, I think they're a good school, and of course, and I want to make sure people know this. I'm Lynn Morris, and this is
Dr. Mary Byrne.
Dr. Mary Byrne, yes, you are. And
Speaking of education.
And she is a doctor of education. And so when you're talking about education, she absolutely understands that. And I understand how important education is, and we need to make some changes and improvements in education, but we're not going to necessarily talk about that today. But I want to kind of, we were talking just before the show started, General, and talking about how we're going to divide kind of like your life up and things like that. And so I want to kind of talk about the beginning. I want to start off by just saying a few things that I know about you. Not only did you teach college at SMS and was teaching law, I would say this, I don't know if you ever thought about this, but your teaching style was absolutely one of the best I've ever had through 5 years of pharmacy school, pre-pharmacy, my graduate school at Southwest Baptist, 2 years in master's in healthcare administration. Everything I've ever done, You know what you did? What he did, folks, is he would walk around the room. I always sit on the front row, but he would walk around the room and walk in between the tables, and he had a piece of chalk in his hand, and he
Wait
would.
a second. I'm about to be charged with a crime. I plead the fifth.
You're an attorney. You can handle it.
Yeah, he's a really good attorney. And here's the deal: he would talk soft, and then he would talk louder, and you'd have to like listen in, and because he's talking about cases, that's how he taught cases. And then all of a sudden, he'd just flick this chalk, and it would break on the board. Do you remember that?
Well, I'm glad you didn't accuse me of having thrown chalk at students.
No.
There probably are times that, you know, I still teach.
Yeah, I know.
Teach a
You
couple of
teach,
weeks a year at Regent
Yeah.
University Law School. It's a very strong up and coming law school. It's broken past a whole bunch of schools in the Midwest, including some of our state schools.
Is it it's a Christian?
It's a Christian
I
law
thought I
school.
looked that up.
And, you know, the interesting part about that is that, you know, Dr. Mary, you understand that academics, an hour is 50 minutes,
That's right.
not at Regent. An hour is 60 minutes. And they allocate the additional 10 minutes per hour so that if you need to show how the law integrates with the elements of creation and faith, you can do that without infringing the so-called legal studies.
So they didn't rewrite Genesis in time and all of that. An hour is an hour.
An hour is an hour. Now, you know, I don't know of another institution, educational institution, but it gives us the liberty to bring to bear the relationship between the truth as expressed in Scripture and the truth as understood and communicated in the law. Of course, my teaching style, I don't know if it's still the same as it was. You're talking 50 years ago.
Yeah, a long time.
50 years
Long
ago,
time ago. We're still young, but it's a long time ago.
Well, you can uncross your fingers and then tell us about how old you really are. I used to say, I tell my wife, we're getting old. She says, no, we're not getting old. We are. You know, once you're in your middle 80s, you're old. But my job, I say in teaching, is not to answer students' questions. My job is to question students' answers.
Oh, okay.
And to lead students to the discovery of truth on their own by suggesting to them that may not be right. Think about this. And I really believe educationally that the things that you learn as a result of your own cognitive deploying your cognitive resources and logic, they stick with you a lot more than stuff that someone just tells you. So if you can lead students in an exercise of discovery when they have what some people call the aha moment. Oh, yeah, I see that. I think it's physiological. I think there's a release of endorphins in your brain that says, wow, I found something. I discovered something that is hard to erase, which is good, because the good things we learn, we don't want them erased or forgotten. Now, you're talking to a guy in his 80s, so I've forgotten more than most people have ever thought. But anyhow, I wish I had.
Well, I tell you what, you're a very wise person. And I'm telling you what, there's people right now in other states. I think in Missouri, we know who General John Ashcroft is. But for the other 49 states, let me tell you a little bit about this man. You graduated from Hillcrest High School. And you're probably the most famous person to ever graduate from Hillcrest High School. And I'm surprised they haven't changed the name of the school. But and then, you know, you went to college, you went to law school in Chicago Law School.
University of Chicago.
University of Chicago. And then you went to Yale University.
Well, Yale was my
undergraduate. Okay.
I thought I was a football player.
Yeah.
And my high school football coach.
You did
a wonderful
play,
guy named Shep Wolford.
Yes,
he
I remember
sent
him.
the film of me playing out east because he knew I was too slow and too small to what was then the Big Eight.
Yeah.
And turns out I was too small and too slow to play out east. But I did play 1 year at Yale University.
Okay.
So was that a scholarship?
Well, Yeah, but it's misleading. It's the truth, but it misleads people to say that it wasn't a football scholarship. Yale University, for anybody who they want, everybody is scholarships are not. So I decided to stop playing for the university after my freshman year, and it affected my scholarship not at all. As a matter of fact, they may have considered increasing it to keep me off the football field.
Well, I tell you what, you have a great sense of humor. So here's some other things that he does, and you're a singer. I told you before you were a professional singer. I think you are because you're so much better than I am. So you're a singer. You're a singer. You're a composer.
Well, I am a composer.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. I know that you guys have a group. There's a group of you men that sing and perform.
Well, right now I have a little band.
A little band.
It includes it's not just guys.
Okay.
But it's called
Oh, good. I'm glad you have some
group. Called the Fossil Gospel Band. It's you don't have to be 80 to be in it, but it helps. Just to give you an idea, Ron, our trombonist, is 91 years old.
Okay.
And between playing trombone in the band, he plays tennis every day. So
that's what I did. I played tennis.
Well,
college scholarship tennis.
You know that you heard about the two cats that were watching the tennis game, and one of them said, "My dad's in that racket." For people who don't know that they used to string rackets with catgut.
That's right. And I used to string rackets. I used to teach tennis lessons. My most famous person I ever taught tennis to was Brad Pitt. I used to
You're talking real fame there.
Yeah. This was amazing. I got to tell the story real quick. I got
one tennis story I got to tell.
Okay. Well, then great. We want to hear both of them because I tell you what, Dr. John Franks was a dentist, and he asked me to buy into this tennis club over there at Village Green. Right there behind the plaza. Nice little club. We had 2 pools. We had some 4 hard concrete courts, but we added 4 clay courts. And so I was the tennis pro after college. I taught lessons to doctors, lawyers, different professional people, their wives, things like that. And Bill and Jane Pitt were members of our club, and I had seen Brad, but he didn't ever play tennis, and he was going to be a senior at Kickapoo. And Bill came up to me that summer before the last year of high school, and he said, "Do you think that you could teach Brad how to play tennis?" And I said, "Well, if he wants to," but I'd never seen him on the court. Bill was good. Bill was a good athlete. Yeah. And I said, "Well, I will if he wants to." And so he said yes. And so I taught him some lessons, probably 10 or more. And he made the tennis team, played about number 3, number 4 singles. And he also played doubles. He lettered. And because this is what Bill Pitt, the father said, Brad needs to work on his confidence. Can you imagine that he needs to work on his confidence? Does he look like he has a confidence problem?
Let me tell you something. What he had was a good parent.
Bill and Jane were good people.
And
Jane just died.
Choosing the right parents is one of the most important choices you can make in life.
Yeah. No,
I had that's a good deal. So you taught Brad Pitt.
Yeah. I've taught some other people too, but that's probably the most famous.
One of the things that being in public life gets for you, and I don't know if that's not the right language, but you get a lot of opportunities to do things that you wouldn't otherwise get.
Sure.
So they were having a charity. Well, I think McEnroe and Bjorn Borg were touring the country with set of matches around, and they were in St. Louis, and they decided to have a doubles match. And John McEnroe teamed up with a guy named Cliff St. James, who was one of the weather type or commentators in St. Louis TV. And Bjorn Borg and I were to play them in it.
How did you know Bjorn that he would pick you?
Well, I don't think he got assigned me. He wouldn't have known me from Dr. Mary.
He'd heard about his reputation.
And so anyhow, Bjorn Borg, he could get the ball no matter where you hit it. He could get there on the court and return it. And one time I played some tennis with Steve Largent one time. He was a wide receiver for Seattle.
I know who he is.
And he was what I call a get tennis player.
Yeah.
But we were down to the match point, and I was serving. And I was serving to John McEnroe. And he, I guess, anticipated that I'd be going up the middle. And he, as soon as I tossed the ball up to make the serve, he ran to the middle and started to come up to take it on the short hop. And I happened to hit the ball with excellent velocity toward the far corner and aced McEnroe to win the match. So that's that just proves that luck is more important than skill.
Oh yeah.
And of course, McEnroe was not a guy who gracefully accepted some slimy politician acing him to end the match. But it was in the St. Louis Arena, the old building that had that wooden ceiling with the special lattice work up. Well, 4,000 people. If you're going to have a lucky shot, it's important to have it in front of us.
That's good. I was too young at the time.
Yeah, well, I forget who he. But I'm sure McEnroe. I hope he's not listening but he has to know how much I enjoyed. The best shot I ever made.
That's awesome. Did you keep that ball? I think you should have got that ball and kept that ball. No. So the U.S. Open starts next week, and Jan and I have been to the U.S. Open. We've been to New York several times because she likes Broadway shows, and so trade-off is go to Broadway shows and watch tennis at the U.S. Open. And we've seen McEnroe, we've seen Agassi, we've seen all those guys, Sampras and everybody. But so it's a great thing. All right, so we know
Sorry
that.
to blow up your program.
No, this is fine. This is fine. I want people to find out who you really are. So that's the whole purpose of this show, because you are a lot of things to a lot of people, and you're very important. But so one of the things too in Missouri, I mean, you've been the auditor, okay? You haven't been able to keep a job, it looks like to me, because
for sure.
because he just kind of moves from place to place. But you've been the auditor, you've been the attorney general, so you kind of practiced before you came the U.S. Attorney General, which is very high up. You were the Missouri Attorney General, and then you became the governor. So those are all very, very important positions. And then you became a U.S. Senator, 2 terms, I think.
No, 1 term.
Oh, 1 term.
I have the distinction of being the only senator in history to have lost his seat in a race to a deceased opponent. You remember?
I do. But that was and that was a very unfortunate thing. But
it was unfortunate. It was more unfortunate for me, less unfortunate for me than it was for the guy who won. Because the guy who won, it was a tragedy.
It was.
His son died in an airplane accident.
Yeah, and it was a sympathy vote, and I remember that now. I remember that, and
well, you can remember it, but I can't forget.
But all the things, all the great things that you've done, and then being U.S. Attorney General. So what was it like being a U.S. Attorney General?
Well, it's a matter of scale, compared to the governor's job, for instance. You can know somebody in every county in the state, and when the governor calls somebody up and says, "I need help," by and large, American citizens are willing to pitch in and help. I mean, we are a well-disposed people of good conscience and goodwill. So that there's a kind of intimacy about being governor. You know the people. Attorney General, especially after 9/11, became a job that had sort of international implications. I think I signed more than a dozen treaties on behalf of the United States with other countries to cooperate for intelligence and for information that would help thwart the terrorist movement, which is still a movement to be thwarted. So there, and to be Attorney General is to have, offices in every state in the unions. A number of states will have multiple offices for U.S. attorneys, which are under the so-called jurisdiction and supervision and cooperation with the Justice Department. And then there are probably a number of 40, 50, 60 offices around the world. So there is a scale about, especially as we require and find ourselves in cooperation internationally with individuals, especially to disrupt, default, hopefully defeat terrorism. That's the main objective, I think, of most of the international responsibilities that I had. And literally the definition of terror is to force people to do with fear and insecurity what they would not do freely on their own. And so a terrorist wants to disrupt the society in which people can make decisions that they make freely. So terrorism is an attack on liberty. And liberty, in my view, is the core value of the universe. I think and our founders in our country made that clear. They said, we are endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. Among these is life, and at the core of that series of three, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Of course, you can't have liberty if you're dead, so life's there. Right. And the pursuit of happiness follows, but liberty is at the core of things, and making choices.
That's one of my passions. I've always, when I've met you and in different venues and you've been the speaker, you have a prodigious memory for history and a deep, deep respect for the founding era. And I'm concerned that in education, we're losing the transmission of that information to our young people. So they don't understand that the primary purpose for taking your tax dollar to support public education is so that you learn who you are as an American and you learn to protect those rights and liberties. And it's been replaced with workforce development. I'm not against people working, not at all. But they don't, if you said, do you know in the Missouri Constitution that you have a right to the fruits of your labor? They don't know the Missouri Constitution and they don't know what I'm talking about. No, that's the purpose of public education. And so I'd like your opinion to two things. One, what attracted you to public service? Because you have this background in law. You could have gone into private practice and been very successful on your own and not worried about public service, but that wasn't your choice. What made you do that?
Well, that's a really, I have always preferred to steer the ship rather than just to ride. And so as long from my earliest days, I think I was the president of the student body of Watkins Grade School on the north side of Springfield.
I know where Watkins was.
When I was in the 5th grade and there were 6 grades, and then while I switched from Parkview High School the first 2 years to Hillcrest High School for the second 2 years, the end of the second, for the second year, I was student body president. So I always had the idea that I wanted to be, and primarily because I think reinforcing the right values is important. And frankly, I think the number one job of a culture is the transmission of values from one generation to the next.
And not just in the churches, but in the schools as well.
Yeah, I think I'm not in favor of using schools to impose spiritual values.
Correct, yeah.
They're secular but public values that coincide with spiritual values.
Yes.
Like
liberty.
Yeah, well, liberty is obviously recited, and our values are under attack because they are no longer taught.
Exactly.
But there's another attack that I'd like to just suggest happens. That when you seek to discredit the people who wrote those values into the documents. So we have been on a cultural suicidal mission, if you don't mind my saying so, of undermining the reputations of the founders of this country by pointing out their flaws and saying that these are, especially as it relates to slavery, which is an ugly institution, but it happens to be the place where we happen to be the culture that abolished it and spent hundreds of thousands of lives in a civil war over it. And that ought to be credited. But when you start to say that the people who wrote our Constitution were not worthy people because they were associated with this substantial, real problem, and they understood it as a problem. I mean, it almost
but it came from England.
Well,
I mean,
slavery did not come from England. Slavery still exists in Africa.
Oh no,
it's
I get
a
that.
worldwide phenomenon.
Yes.
If you know Thomas Sowell,
yes.
a great philosopher at Stanford,
economist,
historian, and you can read that there isn't any society that has never been enslaved, or any society that hasn't enslaved others.
Correct.
So we don't.
My point was the British colonies had slavery. It
Sure,
wasn't, and they were British at the time, and it was a British court of law that protected that. But the American mind started with the Mayflower Compact.
Yeah,
that's why the 1619 Project was, to me, it was anathema, because Nicole Hannah Jones says, let's just pretend it started in 1619. No, dear, you can't. Because our founding document was the Mayflower Compact, and that was not, it was in the North. It wasn't in the Southern Virginia colony where, the slavery was protected in the British court of law. And so to dishonor the history of coming out of this British mindset of socialism and slavery, so that this new idea about self-government and liberty in the North. I mean, that's what I keep telling people, is if you really understood American history, you'd know that the seeds of the Civil War were planted in 1620. Because that when the Mayflower blew off course and they landed in a place that was not chartered, they were free to start a new idea. That was the American mind. And that's what I'm trying to say. We're not teaching that history.
Well, and I'm just saying that in teaching that history, we're making sure, unfortunately, that we discredit the people
yes.
who were responsible for this elaboration of liberty, imperfect as it was at the time, but which led to abolition.
Yes.
And in all fairness, the abolitionist movement in England was, they banned the slave trade, and then they banned slavery in sequence, and maybe that's the wrong sequence. And we got to it here, and it still operates some places in the world. But the point is, we have a tremendous heritage of remediating evils.
That's right.
And the people who deserve credit for that were those fundamental folks who said what the main values. The idea of liberty is sort of so simple that I would have to call it profound. No one is free in the past. We cannot change the past. I mean, the way I read the Bible, it says that God doesn't even change the past. It's not. There isn't. We have do-overs, but we don't have. And we can. And the past exists, and everyone is free in the future. When I was governor, I had a program and attorney general where I would visit classrooms and I would ask fifth graders, how many of you can change the past? No hand goes up.
Right.
How many of you can change the future? And what I want people to understand is everybody has a chance to change the future.
Yeah.
When Jesus, greatest person, more than person, but of all times, meets the woman who has a rather tawdry past, he sums up the whole philosophy of freedom in just a few words. 10. I woke up one night in the middle of the night with these 10 words. Neither do I condemn thee. That addresses the past.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go and sin no more. That addresses the future. And he says, look, forget about the past. Let's get on with the future and do the right thing in the future. That's the formula for good living.
Change your trajectory.
Yeah, change. And change is a fundamental component of liberty.
Yes.
Because if there's no change, there's no reason to have liberty. We're all doing what we're doing and we'll be there. But we are free to change and upgrade. And of course, this is a great story of America. I mean, 3 out of 4 of my grandparents came from overseas, and they came here because this was a place that they could change what they were doing.
Right.
And so anyhow, I love the idea of teaching. One of the reasons I'm in love with teaching and this is my 20th year teaching law school after having left the Attorney General's office.
That long ago.
It is that long ago. Wow. I should not remind me. but is that I want to speak into the next generation.
Right. No, and I'm sure they are very blessed to have you as a professor.
If they're not, they can get somebody.
One more thing.
Attorney that they could hire.
One more thing I wanted to say about education, because our good friend, our that's no longer with us, Dee Wampler,
yeah.
I know you knew him very well too, and he was a very good friend of mine. He was a mentor of mine too, and we've had him on our radio talk show, political talk show, several times. We've had him on this show 2 or 3 times. In fact, he was going to be on my show the following week when he died up in St. Louis. But what I was going to say about Dee was he had this collection from Parkview when he went to school of history books all the way through about 20 some years of history books, and he had it highlighted and underlined how they'd changed history over time. And I said, well, there's the danger. You can't change history. And if you don't learn from the past, you're going to make the same mistake again. And that's why I know, that's why I criticize. And even though I've had a tremendous education, you did, and you did, we are at the age group where we've had great public education and we've had great education in college. However, the people today, the young kids today, my grandkids, maybe not quite so much. And so that's a problem, because anytime you start altering history and misleading kids to think things that aren't right, that's where we have a problem. And we don't teach patriotism either.
Public education didn't come in until about 75 years after the onset of America. And so public education, in many respects, elbowed private education out of the way.
Well, Jefferson wanted, in the Virginia Plan, he wanted publicly funded education. And his idea was to identify those kids who had the gift of leadership like yourself, and then equip them to become leaders in government. So you would have been, Jefferson would be very proud of you.
Well, I'm not going to. We're all proud of Jefferson.
Yeah.
My
point is, that was the vision, and is to preserve the republic.
Mm-hmm. And an educated populace is a populace capable of effectively handling freedom and decision making.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a core reason. But I'm afraid
it's been hijacked.
So my grandchildren are largely the products of.
Well, that's what I'm saying. My grandchildren are too, and
private education.
Yes, I understand.
But there are some things being done in Missouri,
which
give people a chance to choose schools, and I think competition in education, and rather than a monopoly where they say this is how it's going to be, and this is what we're going to do to your child, not for your child. And we're going to teach your child what to think, not how to think. How to think is an important component of exercising liberty.
That's right.
What to think is a way of if that's all you know is somebody telling you what to think, it's a way of depriving you of your liberty.
That's right.
I think that's true.
I'm sorry to.
No, let's go. Hey, so here's the next question. So, as a U.S. Senator, as an Attorney General, what was your experience? We see today, over the last several years, we've seen, I think, and even in the state of Missouri, we have so much division between parties. We even have division between our own party. And so it seems like it kind of handcuffs you in trying to get things done. So Congress, when you were a U.S. Senator and Attorney General, do you think it was better back then than it is today in getting along and trying to pass something that would help 300 million people? I mean, was it better then, or was it still like it is today?
For the good old days.
Yeah, I
I was
guess that
I was with Jack Danforth a couple months ago, I guess,
Yeah.
at the Governor Bond's funeral services.
yeah.
And Jack Danforth stroked his chin and said, "Man, I find myself saying, 'Oh, to be 80 again.'" Well, sometimes there is this idea that things were always better in the past, but I think there was a greater consensus of what we wanted for America in the past. The idea, and there is a tension that exists between the idea of liberty, which is consequential choices, and equity.
Mhm.
Now, if everyone gets the same, no matter what choices they make, you've really pulled the rug from beneath liberty.
Correct.
Right.
Because if liberty has no consequence, then you're not free. You can make choices. You can say, I want a chocolate one or a vanilla one, but they give you some bland mixture and everybody gets the same. And this is at the very heart of the Judeo-Christian understanding that God, maybe his greatest gift to everybody, because he had plenty of controlled creatures, is to have choice creatures. So in the Garden of Eden, they had the choice. And the choice had consequence. I mean, I always say that after they made the wrong choice, they were ushered to the edge of the garden and delivered the right foot of fellowship, which they were kicked out. And, if we don't have consequence associated with choice, freedom means nothing.
Right.
So this idea that everybody should have the same,
Right.
that the outcome should be identical, no matter how productive you are, how counterproductive you are, how virtuous you are, or how destructive you are, you get the same. Now that's really sort of ultimate communism and ultimate equity. The idea of rewarding achievement and rewarding good decision making and industry instead of indolence is associated with good decisions. And that's what education is all about, helping people understand consequences of decisions and how to make good decisions.
Yes, and that leads me to another aspect of education. History was a huge part of it. The other part was the humanities, which is being squeezed out by the same pressure for workforce development. And the whole point was, okay, so we can't, and it's not desirable to impose religion in the public sphere of education, but the values of what it meant to have heroic quality or the values of consequences of poor choices was taught through novels. It was taught through classic literature, and that's being squeezed out. And
This idea of real leadership involves inspiration,
yes,
not imposition.
yes.
So
Hey, that was profound.
Well, I mean, I've thought about
You
this
thought
for
about it.
about 50 years, and people used to say, well, you're in government because you want to impose your religion. I would have to say, no, it's against my religion to impose my religion.
Right.
My religion understands that God made us free. And if I were to say to God, now you made everybody free to make good and bad choices, but I'm going to correct that. And there are religions that say that they should impose. And if you don't go with what they say, you're supposed to be killed, decapitated. And some of the most violent of the terrorist groups buy that notion that it's their job to do what God didn't do in creation.
Yes.
Our job is to respect what God did in creation and not teach. I don't know that we should teach people jobs as so much as we should teach people how to think. And when people are thoughtful, they're trainable. And there are times in which I think there are plenty of businesses that ought to do their own training.
Absolutely.
but they need the trainables. And trainables are people who know how to think and understand that there are consequences that are associated with decision making.
Yeah. Well, even in the Old Testament, God said, "My people perish for lack of knowledge," and I think we can extend that and say, your country will perish for lack of knowledge on the character that it takes to cherish, to treasure the freedom you have, and the character it takes to self-govern and engage in government. Because it was trying to think, Bob Dixon, who said, "You may not be interested in government, but government's interested in you."
Yeah.
And he was saying that's what business licensure is all about, to control.
Yeah.
So we have to appreciate that. And that's what I've always been impressed with when I've heard you speak, is the knowledge of history, the values that, even if they're not explicit, the values that are implicitly driving those values, and then how you act in your decision making according to them.
Abraham Lincoln made a spectacular speech long before he became president or went into politics. I think it was in 1838 or 39 at the Lyceum.
Senator in Illinois.
Pardon?
Was he then the senator?
No, I think it's prior to his Senate time in Illinois. But he said we must either live as free men or die by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something suicidal about the American culture right now, whether you're aborting all the children,
right,
or whether you're into child mutilation by suggesting to them that they can change their gender. Yep. And we're not replacing ourselves. So the suicide may not be with a single shot to one's temple.
Right.
But it can be that the culture no longer respects and understands and is willing to make realistic decisions based on outcomes that are clearly understandable. Children who have neutered themselves with surgeries that deface what God gave them, and individuals and children whose lives are stilled while they're yet unborn.
Mm-hmm.
Sooner or later, that kind of culture that doesn't replace itself is in the process of suicide. So that we have serious issues, and part of it is our inability as a culture to face up to what the real consequences of what appear to be satisfying choices in the short term, conveniences, mean in terms of the culture in the long term.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to take a real quick break and be thinking about this, because when we come back, I've got two sponsors we need to brag about a little bit. But I want you to be thinking about. We're going to wrap it up by talking about today. What do we think about the government today? We've got a female attorney general. I think she's doing a great job. And but want to kind of talk about President Trump, what's going on today in Congress, and talk about the differences between the different philosophies that we have and stuff like that. But right now, our two sponsors that really make our show possible is Brad Pistow. He is a certified fiduciary financial planner located in Ozark, Missouri. He's written a couple of books, Safe Money Matters and Bulletproof, both best-selling #1 books on retirement planning on Amazon. And he's my financial planner. And he is licensed in 16 states. He is also available in all 50 states. He travels all over the country. He's kind of like you, General. He's everywhere. He speaks everywhere. He goes everywhere. He writes articles for the Wall Street. He writes articles for USA Today business section. I first saw him, Jan, I have a condo in Florida. I was at Denny's. I was eating breakfast. I got the USA Today. I see this article about retirement planning. Jan and I were getting ready to sell our pharmacies, and I knew I was going to do some things. And I read this. I called him Brad Pistol. I didn't know it was Pistow, but I said, hey, this guy's pretty smart. I wish I had a guy like him in the Ozark area. And then 2 weeks later, I'm eating at a little restaurant between Ozark and Sparta. I'm eating breakfast, and I've got a gentleman that he and I are talking together. And all of a sudden, I hear these three men, older men, and they're next to me, and they're talking about this Brad Pistow. They called him Pistow. And they were talking about how much money they've made, and they're not worried about running out of money and before they run out of their life. And I'm just, boy, you're not supposed to eavesdrop, but I did. And I said, excuse me, guys. I said, I've been listening to you. I said, where is this guy at? And they said, well, he's right there on Farmer Road, right across from the bank in Ozark. And I go, oh, wow. And so that's how God led me to this guy. And I wouldn't recommend, we are very careful about sponsorship. We've had other people that want to be sponsors on our show. And we're very, very careful because I wouldn't want to recommend anyone that would let you down. And so if you call 417-581-9222, 417-581-9222, you will get Lisa. She's going to answer the phone. She's also licensed too. It can help you. But Brad Pistow will see you, no charge, talk to you and help you, send you information. They'll send you a book, and you can read a book or two and find out what he believes in. And you won't be sorry. So Brad Pistow. The second sponsor that we've had, and I've had him during my radio talk show, political talk show, and as well as almost 5 years here on this show, is John Whittaker. It's now Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia. It used to be Youngblood Motors. That's where I bought my Jeeps from those guys, and now I'm getting ready to buy me a Nissan Murano. So that's what I'm getting ready to buy, and these are my sponsors. They're located at 3515 South Campbell. They have new cars on one side, Nissans and Kias. It's two different dealerships owned by the same person, John Whittaker. And on the other side of this street, on Campbell Street, South Campbell in Springfield, they have used cars. What I really like about the used cars is they have some cars that are certified. The last two Jeeps I bought were certified cars. One was 8,300 miles. One was 4,800 miles. You save a lot of money. I'm the type of guy that wants to save money. And so I buy a car that's not brand new, but that doesn't have a lot of miles. And I still know I've got warranty, and I know I've got assurance of the inspection points that they check on their car. But they have a good selection, and they have great service and great price. And I tell you what, I highly recommend these guys. They've been in business for almost 45 years, one of the oldest family-owned car dealerships in the Springfield, Missouri area. And they have people from Arkansas and Kansas and everywhere else that comes and buys a car from them. So I highly recommend them, and let them know, let both of those sponsors know that Mary and I, Dr. Mary and I, sent them, because it's important for those people to know. Okay, so now we're back on. We are now current times. This is 2025, and we've got a lot of stuff going on in our world, in our country. That's why we called this show Changing Times. God told me one night to call this show Changing Times. And we are in the midst of changing times, and it's probably going to keep changing. What do you think today compared in the past? What's our biggest problems? What are we doing good? If I will tell you this, and I really sincerely mean this, folks. If you wanted to look up in a dictionary, I just thought of this. If I was listening to General a while ago, if you looked up in a dictionary, you wanted to look up what wise man. I want to look up in the dictionary, wise man. It would say General John Ashcroft. I really think so. I think so. So
I've been called wise guy many times. Wise man, no, a wise man. I don't have frankincense, gold, or myrrh. And
well, you're close. Okay, you're close. So what do you think about 2025?
Well, I
our
think
future?
the number one challenge for us is not other people. I think the idea having the right values in the American population, and we need to understand the value of freedom and the value of consequence in our choices. But on the public scene right now, there are anybody who anticipated all the things that are happening right now. People will either tell you that this surprised them or they'll lie to you about that and other things. Nobody. And index of this to me, and I've known the Clintons for a long time because I was Attorney General of Missouri. He was Attorney General of Arkansas. I was Governor of Missouri. He was Governor of Arkansas. And then I was in the Senate and when he was president and that kind of stuff. But, when Hillary Clinton says, if this all gets done, and it's certainly within the realm of possibility, she'd nominate Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Right. You'd say, wait a second, that's a clear indication that this was out of the range of. So there's something about this president and his willingness to step out and take on a very, very substantial. First of all, he understands the power of America and the value of American enterprise because he's forged all these treaties and these peace agreements based on whether or not these countries can have access to the American marketplace. I think that's been largely it. And I watched on television 2 days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, 70,000, I think they were Buddhist monks. They had these people in these orange or saffron robes, thousands of them. They're nominating Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, And so there is a global impact and influence being exercised on behalf of America right now that has not been similarly exercised maybe since World War II. And I'm not sure. I was a pretty young guy in World War II. But the idea that when the President of the United States says we need to develop a plan for peace, we're killing millions of people, it ought to stop, and summons the European leaders on a full day's notice, and they're there like he's giving away new cars.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there. I'm saying to myself, we are witnessing spectacular times. Mm-hmm. So there are monumental occurrences and transactions, if you will, that are shaping the nature of the globe. So this is now there are things that are done with one style or another that you can pick at and say, well, I don't like the way this is happening, and anybody who tells you they like it all will probably fudge other things too. But I frankly, I like the idea of America being a peacemaker. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're, as a culture, ought to assume that we can dictate to the world.
No.
Or I'm sorry I used that word because it's been the left has called Donald Trump a dictator.
Yeah,
and
that's what they're calling him.
I don't think it's fair to say that. I think he's offering people a set of options and choices that can be very productive and can be very helpful. So there's a way in which I am at this point encouraged. And, real leadership is not the idea of mandating things. It's, as I said earlier, it's the idea of inspiring things. Yeah. Governance operates by imposition. It imposes penalties if you don't do what they want.
Government is force. Washington said that.
Yes. Well, so government goes by imposition. Leadership goes by inspiration. So if you can model the right things that inspire people to live the way they should live, and obviously for a person like me, Jesus is the ultimate leader.
Right.
He didn't impose anything, but he inspired everything. And thousands of years later, the most influential force in history is by inspiration and all the governance things. So I'm really to call upon America to be great is important. I think the greatness ought to come, though, as a result of our dedication to values. And it's not necessarily based on, although frankly, our military capacity is very important. I mean, there are just two indelibly stamped events in the last several years that have illustrate what can happen. The withdrawal from Afghanistan, where you saw people clinging to the landing gear of the planes that were taking
trying to get
away,
trying to get back.
That debacle didn't inspire anybody around the globe to say America really knows what it's doing. So quality in the way you live and do things can make a big difference. And you array that against the surgical excision, if you will, cutting out of the Iranian nuclear capacity. And of course, I believe last week when President Trump met with Putin on the carpet at Elmendorf-Richardson Air Force Base. I worked up there a couple of years when I was a young person. And he had to beat the bombers fly over. I think they're B-2s.
Yeah.
It was a reminder.
Pretty loud.
Well,
and pretty big, pretty impressive.
What was kind of interesting about that, Donald Trump didn't do much, but he just watched Putin go.
Yeah,
he signaled a lot. He didn't say a lot, but he signaled.
Well, sometimes you're profound there. Sometimes not saying anything is the biggest signal.
Yeah.
If he'd say, that's our stuff. Just, don't worry about that. I mean, we got that every day. That's better than saying, oh, look what we just looked into. Yeah. No, that's not, so the idea, sometimes silence speaks louder than the yelling.
That was a good reminder to Putin who we are.
But here's what's kind of interesting to see these two world leaders. Donald Trump wants to make America great again. What does Putin want to do?
Make Russia great.
Yeah. See, Putin looks back to a Russia, and I don't think I don't know how evil he is or how he isn't, but I think his ambition, and this is why it sells to the Russian culture and Russian people. He says, we used to be someone to reckon with, and we're not anymore, and I'm going to make us great again. I don't think he doesn't have, what would be MAGA be, MRGA, make Russia great again. But but his and I think what we really need to do is to understand that the real greatness of America comes from the kind of values we embrace.
Right.
And our exports and our conquests have not been for purposes of domination. When we've been involved in substantial wars, it's been for purposes of liberation, not domination. And the difference between a great Russia was to dominate and a great America is to liberate. Go through Southeast Asia where our boys died in the Philippines, go to Japan, go to all the various wars. And basically the people in those settings are all freer than they ever were before we were there, although we didn't initiate it. So the ethic of leadership that comes from this country should be not coercive, but inspirational. And and I'm thrilled that when America can be seen as a culture of liberty and freedom, and that's why people come here.
Mm-hmm.
People, and I'm afraid one of the things that happens, and I've got to quit, and you guys have a program to seal up, but when America was not a substantial welfare society, people came here for freedom.
Yes.
The more society you develop that provides for equity, that everybody gets the same and everybody gets the benefit, instead of people coming here for freedom, they come here for free stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when people come here for free stuff, first of all, they're going to be disappointed in some measure, and disappointed people and disaffected people are not good citizens usually. But we need an America that attracts people, and it is a magnet. But it's a magnet so that when Emma Lazarus writes the poetry on the base of the Statue of Liberty, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, the next phrase is the key phrase. Your huddled masses yearning to breathe free.
Mm-hmm.
Their objective, we can take anybody. The huddled masses, the teeming refuse, in accordance with her poetry, is fine to take if there are people whose main objective is freedom, because the motivation for freedom is the thing that's productive of the best citizenship. But people who come here because they think, hey, all you got to do is get across that border and lie down and you'll get a free phone, you'll get free transportation, you get put up in the best hotels in New York, Chicago, and other so-called sanctuary cities. And so, I've been in government at substantial responsibilities as governor and senator, blah, 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 all that. I found out that if you can hire above average people of the might, you're going to have an ascending level of quality. But if you start inviting people in who don't see themselves as servants of the organization,
right,
but as just consumers of the benefit,
right,
your organization's going to tank.
right.
If all people come to your company for is to just somehow suck the benefits out of it and not make the contribution. So that's where we need to be as a culture. We're a little behind the 8 ball in that respect, but I think we are starting to, the American people are beginning to say, hey, wait a second. We want people to come who come for the basis of contribution rather than consumption. We want people who will be inspirational and don't want imposition. Not to come so they can sort of manipulate our system so that they can be on the top of the heap that abused other people in their homelands. This is a system where mobility is the magnet that draws. So that's what we want. I think we're moving toward that. So that's a note of encouragement about our culture right now. Look, at my age, you look at the charts, I may not be around to see some of this stuff, but I think for the sake of my children and grandchildren, I'd love to see America have a rebirth. We get back to this rebirth of freedom and an understanding of consequence for choice and rewarding people based on merit rather than cultural identity or on the basis of gender or on the basis of some flimsy political ideology.
I think President Trump is trying to get there. I would just use the words contributor. When I think about your grandparents, what you talked about, and people that I have known that come over here from other countries in the past, they wanted a better life, but they wanted to contribute. They were contributors. Today, we have all these people that unfortunately have been let in, and they are takers. Yeah. They are takers, and they just take things without earning them and contributing, and therefore our veterans and a lot of our people aren't getting the lifestyle that those people are getting, that we don't even know who they are, and they've come in. So the one thing I wanted to close with is my personal feeling. I'm a businessman. I've been in business. I've owned several businesses, and I had my 26 pharmacies, and I think I understand business a little bit. But I'm also been a public servant, not anywhere near like you, but I've started out with the school board and just gone my way up. And I love public service too. But I really believe that President Trump is successful, and he's going to be successful because he's a businessman. Do you think that's had anything to do? Have you seen a lot of businessmen in Congress that are they come from other? There's nothing wrong with coming from other walks of life, but I think he has an edge because he understands business relationships and how to deal with people.
Yeah, he does. But, I don't think it's an automatic that a businessman, there are so many so-called big businessmen who don't look to government as a guarantor of freedom, but look to government as a manager of an economy that will.
Well, then that would be wrong.
And we've got, but some of the richest of all people are willing to buy into these, I call them schemes or frameworks of so-called equity. Look what all this business of DEI. Which
Yeah, well,
I happen to
thank goodness we're getting rid of that.
Didn't earn it, just
Yeah.
got it by identity. And they were willing to. So sometimes businessmen are so interested in their own business that they can be bought with a government program. And if you'll subscribe to who the power is, you get to keep your trajectory of growth. And so it just takes the right values, business or not business. People who
it's an understanding of the constitutional purpose of government. Because you said it, the guarantor of liberty.
Yeah. And, that's what our Constitution is.
That's right.
I mean, I'm doing this to you. People talk about democracy.
Yes.
Well, the Constitution is a set of safeguards against democracy.
Yes.
Winston Churchill once said, democracy is two wolves and a lamb deciding what's for dinner.
That's right.
As long as you have the majority, you can eat the lamb. And nowhere in our Constitution or in our Declaration of Independence, or I believe in any of the state constitutions, is the word democracy mentioned. France illustrated what can happen with a run-amok democracy during the French Revolution. So democracy, another Churchill quote, is the best system ever devised, except for everything else we've tried, is the worst system, except for everything else we've tried. It's a way to make decisions, but it does not define outcomes. And we should limit democracy into the arena of necessary group decision-making with protections in the Constitution. The Constitution is a limitation of democracy, saying you can only decide certain things. The rest of things people are free to decide. And thank God that people have the right and privilege of deciding so many things for themselves, and we ought to preserve that.
Amen.
Very good. Very good. Well, I tell you what, we could spend another hour talking about the Democratic Party and socialism, because it looks like that we've got two philosophies out there right now. And I Dr. Mary, I think that's going to be another idea that we need to really explain to people, because maybe they haven't been learning it in school for the young people, but there is really threats right now with our system that we got a guy in New York that wants to be mayor, and he's certainly a socialist. We have other people in the Democratic Party that are socialists, and they want that type of government. And the four of us, including Dennis, our producer, I mean, we're not going to settle for socialism. We know the downfalls of socialism. So anyway, that's another show. But hey, thank you very much.
Yes.
Glad to be here. I wish you well.
You are absolutely be defined in the dictionary as a wise man. So we appreciate all the years of service, public service that you've done. That's not easy. I know that every day. I'm getting ready to go to the courthouse, and I know that I think about it because every day I wake up and I'm excited. I go down there and try to work on things, work on our county budget right now, and got some issues and things going on, mostly good. But there's a lot of stuff. Every once in a while, somebody walks in and they're not happy You know what that's like, and they
You know, when I was governor and they came to me with things they weren't happy about, I told them to call the county commission.
I think that's why I'm still getting those calls, sir. So thank you very much. So from all those years now, and now I know why I'm getting those calls
Yes.
about weeds and everything else. Okay, so thank you very much. But no, really appreciate it. It's been great. I know the listeners appreciate it. We've got a great show again next week lined up,
We're the United States of America.